Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani, and I'm going to share with you something that I read today. And when I read stuff like this, I am reminded of why people who are attempting to divorce narcissistic people think that they're never going to get through this. So let's take a look at this. People who are in narcissistic relationships really do believe, especially people going through narcissistic divorces, believe that they're never going to have a chance. And again, what I'm about to share with you kind of doubles down on that. So you know I've talked about it on this channel, my favorite early morning activity. I read the news, and I largely read it to learn the state of narcissism in the world that day, and the news never disappoints. On this particular day, I was reading a column in the New York Times written by some ethics professor who takes real-life situation, and in these real-life situations, people are writing in. About a third of these seem to involve narcissistic antagonistic situations. Now, this guy's not a shrink. He's apparently a philosopher or something, and he attempts to answer them. And he usually doesn't answer them, but he just basically repeats what the person says and will often say how hard it is because there is no clear right answer. However, in what I'm about to share, which is going to make you want to scream loudly, I read this and I did scream loudly, and I was in a hotel, and then I hoped I didn't wake anyone up because it was early in the morning. I'm going to save the punchline on this video for the very end, so you better keep watching. So the setup is that the question came, to this ethics column, the question came from a person who had been in a marriage with someone who had kind of abruptly asked for a divorce. They'd been working on their marriage in therapy, and then the person who asked for a divorce moved out and very quickly entered a new relationship and very quickly got engaged. Big surprise, it turns out that the person who asked for the divorce and the new person had been seeing each other while they were married. Again, like I said, big surprise. And the fiance that he had been cheating with had also been married and was cheating on her husband. So the two cheaters got together and got engaged. Their kids over time adjusted, etc. However, the woman who was left came to learn that her husband, she in a confirmed way learned that her husband had cheated on her throughout their marriage, not just with his new fiancé, but throughout the marriage. And so she's writing this letter to this ethics person saying, wanting to know if she should tell the new fiancé to forewarn her. So what do you do when you had a serial philanderer ex? Do you tell the new partner? And the ex-wife writing this letter felt partly motivated because now her ex-husband and the new fiancé are creating this blended family with her kids, and she doesn't want all of this to blow up again for her kids. And the ex-husband of the fiancé vacations with them. The person writing the letter does not vacation with them. So all these people are living in some blissfully unaware blended family situation. Now the ethics guy, once again, drops the ball. Big surprise, he had no answer for her. I know more than a few of you have grappled with something like this in your narcissistic relationship world. My sense is the only way people learn is by experience. And when children are younger, they do not and should not hear about parental infidelities. Not to protect the cheater parent, but to protect kids who are already confused and having to deal with the mess of a selfish and possibly narcissistic parent. I understand why the person who wrote the letter may want to say like, yo, this guy's been a cheater since forever. Not a good thing for the kids to hear. Now, I know it is unsatisfying for a lot of people to hear that. You know, this idea of like, all right, fine, let the new person get cheated on. Revenge is a dish best served cold and all of that. But there's no win in telling the cheating new fiancé, who is also ultimately probably going to be cheated on. Because if the lady who wrote the letter says something, you know she's going to be portrayed as the woman scorned. So there's no winning. And the greater likelihood is that her ex-husband is going to say, ugh, my ex-wife is crazy and she's still not over me. And then the new fiancé will double down. So my feeling is let the damn marriage fall apart on its own. And the letter writer will be healed by the time that happens and not care. The kids are going to learn who their father is without the mom having to be the bad one for pointing out that their father is indeed a serial philanderer. But that's not what this video is about, okay? The damned money shot of this article written to the ethics column, because the ethics guy had no good advice. The money shot was the comments. So now I'm like sitting and reading these comments to get a pulse on how people think about this, especially because it gives me a look into what the enablers and the narcissistic people think. And woo, this one jumped out at me. Again, I'm leaving the punchline on this video for the very end. So this is what one person wrote in the comment. And I'm sort of paraphrasing some of this to keep it short and offering some of my commentary, okay? So this is what the comment person wrote in the comment section of the article. This is what they write. At the outset, I'm not condoning infidelity or deception or the trail of loss and sorrow caused by someone who cheats. Now, this person saying this already let us know that this comment was going to be bad, right? So they go on to say, while there are certainly people who cannot honor their emotional obligations to their family, in my professional experience, infidelity rarely happens in a vacuum. For whatever reason, there is a hole in the relationship that leaves room for looking elsewhere. It does not make it right or just, but anecdotally, when I hear both sides of the story, I have always learned that the relationship fell apart bit by bit over time, over the day-to-day things, lack of communication, finances, child rearing philosophies. Often, the partner who looks elsewhere has tried to change things and has been feeling sorrow and frustration in the relationship for a long time. Sometimes the person left behind was happy because everything was going his or her way and they could not or would not see or hear their partner. Oh, and folks, it gets better, because here is the rest. This person in their comment goes on to say a bunch of what is supposed to be empathic nonsense. I'm sure the person who wrote the letter is suffering, blah, blah. That's not even empathic. That's just a statement of fact. And ready? Here's the punchline. Because this was actually the first line of the comment, but I saved it best for last. Ready? The person who wrote that comment started with, I am a family law attorney, mediator, and child advocate in my state. And for those of you wondering what state, it's California. The person posted using initials, so I have no idea who they are. But after I was screaming, again, I was in a hotel room, folks. So I did scream and cursed. Couldn't scream too loud. Probably shouldn't scream too loud at home either. And probably shouldn't scream at all. But let's break that comment down. Because when you read a comment like that, I actually think if you really pay attention to it, it may help you feel like you're less out of your mind. This person, this so-called family law attorney mediator, who is actually guiding people through these divorces, actually believes that most cheating happens because the person who was cheated on is partially responsible, and that this was due to a lack of communication and different effing philosophies. And the part that honestly made me want to do a rage dance was, often the partner who looks elsewhere has tried to change things and has been feeling sorrow and frustration in the relationship for a long time. Sometimes the person left behind was happy because everything was going his or her way and they could not or would not see or hear their partner. Let's just sit with that for a minute, shall we? This YouTube channel is a narcissism channel. And we know narcissistic people are prone to cheat. Why? And this is backed up by the literature. They're prone to cheat because they're novelty seekers, because they need new supply, because they lack empathy, because they're deeply entitled, and because they're selfish. So are we to believe that they looked elsewhere because they have been so sad and so frustrated for so long? Because that's probably what they're telling you. And that the person who was in the relationship, the person being cheated on, in essence, the person who was narcissistically abused, was happy because everything was going their way and they didn't see their partner. F you, F you, F you. Sure, Are there cases when this may apply? Sure, people get divorced for lots of reasons. But with a serial cheater, which was the case in this article, in the vast majority of cases, we are talking about a narcissistic cheater who wasn't just cheating, but who was probably emotionally abusive in so many ways. Some of your sort of sad sack one-night stand cheaters, or you're remorseful if they're caught after their one time and commit to therapy and double down on the relationship cheaters, those folks cheat, they're probably not narcissistic. And many marriages, actually not many, some marriages can come back strong if the betrayer/cheater makes amends and then really focuses on cherishing and taking care of and establishing trust with the partner that they harmed by cheating on them. And they slowly build trust up back brick by brick, and above all else, they never, ever cheat again. Listen, a narcissistic person ain't going to do all that. They're very likely to do it again, and they just get better at hiding it. But what is chilling to me, not only the bad advice from the ethics person, but more chilling to me about this comment, is I already know that lots of people were in agreement with the commenter's stance. In fact, a lot of people liked the comment. Two people in a marriage, cheating only happens when needs aren't being met, that kind of nonsense. The chilling part, this is a person who is a family law attorney and mediator and must weigh in on custody matters. And if this is their belief system, can you imagine sitting in front of a person like this who thinks that maybe you are partly to blame for your partner's cheating and may even feel that there is a good rationale for it? Definitely not a good place to start a mediation. I am not an attorney. I cannot give legal advice. But in narcissistic divorces, we do know mediation can be tricky. There is the inherent assumption in mediation that the two parties at a mediation table are reasonable and are invested in a collaborative solution. But a narcissistic person isn't interested in that, which is why these divorces typically require attorneys and judges. Lawyers and judges do become a necessary part of this mess because a narcissistic person can't play nice. It's for this reason, folks, that if you think lawyers, mediators, therapists, family members, custody evaluators, or anyone else, frankly, is going to hear your story of a narcissistic relationship always with an open ear, think again. It's absolutely crucial, especially if you're having to dismantle one of these relationships, to be discerning as hell. Figure out who is openly and able to hear about the asymmetry of these relationships, and recognize that narcissistic people will still go out there in their so-called sorrow and frustration to cheat because they feel they have a right to, and they'll convince the mediator that they do, even as you try a million things while the relationship was happening to make the relationship work and sacrifice your sense of self to make it work, and can still find people like this who think you were happy because everything in the relationship was going your way, and that's why your partner cheated. People who experience infidelity, especially repeated or sustained betrayals, have described it as a betrayal like almost no other. It often can result in psychological fallout that can parallel other forms of traumatic fallout and can result in persistent psychological and psychiatric symptoms. Sure, some people cheat when stuff isn't working in a relationship, but the serial, repeated, and conniving cheating, we met after we broke up, that kind of BS, that is typically the handiwork of a narcissistic betrayer. Sadly, the lack of empathy that any of you may have experienced in a narcissistic marriage, as comments like the one I was reading show, will also be witnessed in the world at large. It's so crucial when you're going through something like this to find support and recognize that the world still doesn't want to get this, doesn't get this. But don't let those comments, people with those belief systems, result in you gaslighting yourself. And one last thing, upon listening to something like this, those of you who really do want to do the deeper dive in healing, if you've gone through these divorces, all of it, please check out the link in the video description to pre-order my new book, It's Not You, coming out in February, or sign up for my monthly healing program, also in the video description. Again, out in the world at large, I think people are getting it, but then I read something like that, person could have definitely given a much more reasonable perspective on it. But it was very clear what that person who was so much power in one of these divorces took as their baseline assumption. And you can absolutely imagine that that series of assumptions could affect all kinds of things, including around issues around custody and the idea that it'll all figure itself out. It won't figure itself out. And those of you who've been through it know it. Thanks again.